Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today I'm actually in a town called Sharon, Pennsylvania. This is on the western side of Pennsylvania, actually close to the Ohio border. But as you see in the title, this video is all about another Alcatraz inmate. But his story is very, very interesting. So I'm going to walk through the cemetery here in Sharon. Going to show you his grave, and along the way we're going to talk to you guys about his story. He attempted to escape Alcatraz once. He actually was incarcerated there at Alcatraz 2 different times, and so obviously he's got a lot of interesting backstory. So let's get into it. Harold Brest was born January 2nd, 1914, and died May 31st, 1979, at the age of 65. Now, Harold grew up here in Sharon, Pennsylvania. Again, this is where he's buried as well. He was the third of 6 children. Unfortunately, when Harold was 7 years old, his mother passed away, and so his father had to take care of and raise the 6 children by himself. Harold was described as a pretty angry young man, and he got into crime at a very young age. At the age of 15, he served his first time in jail for trespassing, which was a 5-day sentence. The next year, he served a 10-day jail sentence. And in 1932, he received 1-year probation for larceny of auto. In other words, stealing a car. In 1933, he went to the state prison in Pittsburgh to serve a 3- to 6-year term for blackmail. He was paroled in 1936, but in January of 1937, he was sentenced to a term of life and 55 years for other crimes that he committed, including kidnapping, bank robbery, etc. He was first committed to Leavenworth Prison in Kansas, but it was eventually transferred to Alcatraz in March of 1937. So the escape attempt from Alcatraz happened on April 13th, 1943. Harold Brest, along with 3 other inmates, attempted to escape. Now, these inmates were 24-year-old James Borman, who was serving 20 years for bank robbery. Floyd Hamilton, who was 36, who had actually been friends with Bonnie and Clyde. He was serving 30 years for bank robbery, assault, and car theft. Fred Hunter, who was 43, was serving 25 years for assault and for harboring a criminal for kidnapping. And then, of course, Harold Brest. He was 29 years old at the time of this escape attempt. Now, Floyd Hamilton was the one who came up with the plan, which it took several months for them to prepare. 2 of them stole pieces of guard uniforms from the laundry, in which they concealed different canisters of fuel, and they planned on using these canisters as like their flotation devices. And the other inmates worked to saw through the metal bars of a window in the mat room, which was where they worked. They ended up covering the window with grease and paint to try to hide their saw marks. Now they waited until one of the days came where it was extremely foggy out, and that is when they put their plan into action. So on that day, the 4 prisoners brandished homemade knives and took one of the guards captive. They tied and gagged him. When a superior officer came looking for him, they did the same thing to him. They ended up gagging him. Then all 4 inmates stripped to their underwear and covered their bodies in grease in order to help protect against the freezing cold waters. As you can imagine, April in San Francisco Bay, very, very freezing cold water. After they tied up the 2 officers, they removed the bars. Again, they already had cut them with the saws earlier, so all they had to do was just remove them. They attempted to take some of the fuel canisters, but were not able to fit them through the bars that they cut. So they had to leave those behind. They then slid about 30 feet down to the cliff, to the water. Now the superior officer, he was a captain. He ended up getting his gag loose from his mouth and ended up yelling to other officers that, of course, these inmates were escaping. They're like, "We need help." Now one of the tower guards noticed all 4 inmates in the water, and so he ended up opening fire on them. Now one of the inmates, named Hunter, ended up injuring himself after he climbed down or jumped down the 30 feet down to the water's edge. So Hunter ended up actually staying in like a little cave that was right there by the water's edge. The other 3 inmates, including Brest, swam on. Officer Johnson ended up firing his Springfield 30-06 multiple times, of course trying to kill the inmates who were trying to escape. Now Brest and Borman saw the splashes of the bullets penetrating the water next to them. They of course could hear the very loud sound of the high-powered rifle. Now Brest and Borman were swimming side by side for a few hundred yards offshore. However, Borman stopped swimming, and Brest noticed that Borman was shot. The water surrounding Borman was turning bright red. Brest saw that Borman's eyes were wide open but glazed over, so Borman ended up being killed. But one of the prison boats, of course, came and got right next to where Borman and Harold Brest were. They grabbed Harold out of the water. Harold did receive a bullet wound. He was shot at least once to his elbow, but apparently it was a minor injury. Now, the remaining 2 inmates, Hamilton and Hunter. So Hamilton had been able to swim to what's known as Little Alcatraz, which was like a little rock, kind of not that far from the shore. He used a large piece of wood plank that they used to escape out of the window from. He ended up swimming back towards Alcatraz. Now Hamilton made it back to the cave where Hunter had been there since the beginning of the escape. Warden Johnston had already assembled a team of 3 officers to go down to search the shore and to, of course, find the remaining 2 inmates. Now, standing near the mouth of the cave, one of the officers noticed a blood smear on one of the rocks. He yelled into the cave, demanding that whoever was in there, they should surrender or else they'll be shot. When he received no response, he decided to fire a round from his Colt .45 pistol into the cave. Fred Hunter immediately raised his arms to surrender, although Officer Miller had no idea that the other inmate, Hamilton, was still hiding in the cave as well. Now, the officer in the tower, the one with the rifle who shot Borman to death, he told the warden that he had fired upon at least 3 inmates, and he thought that Hamilton had probably been killed just like Borman had. Now, the prison actually launched patrols around the island with boats for hours and hours and had no luck trying to find Hamilton. So Warden Johnson had actually felt confident that Hamilton had also met his demise and was presumably dead in the water. And the warden was so convinced that Hamilton was dead, he actually put out a statement to the press. And he said, "Hamilton is dead. He was shot and we saw him go under," which again was a complete fabrication, complete lie. They may have thought they saw that, but they definitely didn't. Hamilton would actually remain hidden in that cave up until April 16th. He was freezing and hungry, and he decided to seek shelter in one of the old buildings, an electric shop. They immediately took Hamilton into custody. Now, after this escape attempt, Harold remained in D block segregation up until May 21st, 1944, which would have been essentially 1 year in segregation, give or take. All right, guys, this is Harold's final resting place. Again, he died at the age of 65. He's buried next to his parents and some of his siblings. So remember, Harold's mom, Bertha, died when he was 7. And it looks like this is 2 of his siblings, Ollie and Molly. They both lived pretty long lives. And then the other side are 2 more siblings, Isabel and Kenneth. So remember how I had mentioned in the beginning of this video that Harold Brest was incarcerated at Alcatraz twice. Now, he had 2 different Alcatraz inmate numbers. His first one was Alcatraz inmate number 380, and then his second one was Alcatraz inmate number 487. And so there was probably like 100 inmates in between when he first went to Alcatraz and then when he came back for his second stint. Now, I searched and searched for over 2 hours this morning trying to find some articles that gave the dates and years of when he was at Alcatraz. I do know that he got to Alcatraz 1937. I believe that would have been his first time going. And then obviously he attempted to escape. That was 1943. So that's a 7-year a 7-year stint there. So it's possible he went to some other prison, then came back, and then attempted to escape, obviously. Again, I really wish I had that information for you, but I just couldn't find it. I looked for a long time this morning, couldn't find anything. But either way, again, just a very interesting story of one of Alcatraz's inmates. Again, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing with pretty good certainty that he died in prison, considering his sentence was life in prison. So I'm pretty sure he died in prison. But either way, again, if you like these videos, and especially if you like these Alcatraz inmate videos, I filmed 3 or 4 other ones in the past. I'll leave a link to some of them at the end if you want to see them. But I'm very fascinated with Alcatraz history, not in a weird way or anything. It's interesting looking back at the history of that prison and the particular inmates that they had. This was one of those stories that I found that I wanted to come here and tell you guys. But yeah, if you have any more Alcatraz inmate stories you want me to tell, let me know. I have at least one more Alcatraz inmate lined up when I get back to Oregon, so I'm gonna film that. But if you have any other ones, preferably obviously their graves where they're buried, let me know. Anyway, I'm gonna head out of here. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, my name's Harmon. I'll see you guys on the next one.